Hello, welcome to the mistakes that I have made in my many years of language learning that you can avoid. I have three main mistakes, main topics. These are both looking at mistakes that you make within language learning that are necessary and unavoidable, because those do exist as well. And these are things like when you're learning a language and you make mistakes with the vocabulary and the grammar and you're speaking and you forget what you're saying and then you come up with another word or use an incorrect word. There are normal mistakes in learning that you will make. However, there's also mistakes that you can avoid, and these are what we're going to jump into here. Number one of these mistakes that you can avoid is the embarrassing speaking mistakes that you make. There is a difference between making a mistake while speaking and making an embarrassing mistake. This is really the difference between making a mistake and allowing that to mean something about you. So making a mistake and then feeling like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, that means I'm dumb. Oh, that means that I shouldn't practice anymore because I'm just no good at this. Oh, this means whatever negative thing it might mean to you, or that might come into your head, any intrusive thought you might have that is negative. And there's the other side of that, which is I made a mistake, that's normal, and I'm going to improve and grow because of that. I'm going to make fewer of those kind of mistakes in the future because I'm aware of it and I'm going to practice in that area. I'm going to get better. See that difference in how you perceive yourself? That is what makes a mistake embarrassing and what makes it not embarrassing. When we adopt this mindset of I am making these mistakes as part of my process and they don't mean anything negative about me. In fact, they mean positive things about me. They mean that I am courageous enough to speak, to try, and to learn another language of another culture. Then what happens here is not only do those mistakes become no longer embarrassing, but they also become something that no longer holds us back, and we make fewer mistakes as a result because it increases our confidence when we speak. We're no longer dreading going into a conversation because of that fear of making mistakes. So you can avoid making embarrassing mistakes by shifting your mindset about what it means to make a mistake and how you are going to respond in that situation when you do, and you will, make mistakes. The second one is to make fewer mistakes by practicing speaking through writing. When you do this, this can be either actually practicing what you're going to say before you do it, similar to what I do when I make these videos by writing my blog post and then speaking on video, or it can be the more holistic approach to this, which is the more I write, the better of a speaker I become. When we write, we are able to access the language in more depth. So we are able to take time to process our thoughts. We no longer have to just respond immediately with what we have inside our heads on the spot in speaking, like in a conversation. When we write, we have time to look up words, to check our grammar, to reread what we've written before we submit it or share it or post it, whatever you're doing with it. What happens as a result of this is that processing that language at a deeper level, it's more exposure to that language, and so when you go to speak, that speaking is more natural, more fluent, because you've had that additional practice. Now, of course, if you practice exactly what you're going to say before you say it, like in a presentation or even a conversation dialogue that you practice, and then you go into a conversation around a similar topic, like I'm talking about the garden, and then I practice all of my garden vocabulary and potential conversation topics, and then I go into a conversation around that. That also helps, but that's a different method. That is using subject-specific vocabulary and more focused on prepping for that moment, which also is going to help you in the greater scheme of your language learning, but the focus there is different. So we have two ways that you can improve your speaking through writing, which are to, one, focus on a specific topic or instance, like a presentation or a conversation, and prepare specifically for that before going into it. And any kind of writing, just making writing part of your language practice so that you improve your overall speaking, your overall fluency, your overall abilities within that language. Because as we write, we also have to read. As you write and you look things up, you are reading, it uses really just all the parts of your brain and improves everything, but specifically your speaking. Number 3 is to remove self-imposed limitations that make you make more mistakes. This is kind of what we talked about in one a little bit, in that it is how you perceive yourself. So in a conversation, you go in and you allow those mistakes to mean something negative about you. You are imposing that limitation on yourself. You are basically going into that conversation expecting to make mistakes and to fail and to walk out of it unsuccessful. Self-imposed limitations are anything that you place on yourself. This is related to speaking, this is related to writing, related to reading, anything. The reason that this is so important is because you can only achieve what you believe you can. If you believe that you are not going to reach fluency in a language, you are going to struggle much more when you encounter an obstacle on your path to fluency, which you will. You will encounter many obstacles. And the fluent language learner becomes fluent because they decide to go through those obstacles. They decide to find a way through them, over them, under them, some way around them. They don't stop and become part of them. They have adopted the mindset of, I can learn this language. This is a challenge. This doesn't mean anything about me. It doesn't mean that I'm incapable. It doesn't mean that I'm dumb. It doesn't mean anything negative about me. It means that maybe I need more practice. It means that maybe this method of studying just doesn't work for me. It means that at this time I don't understand what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure out another way to do it. When you adopt that mindset of, I'm going to do this no matter what, when I encounter obstacles, I'm going to find a way around them, you become unstoppable. You become a fluent language learner eventually. This is you removing your own limitations. And those are the only real limitations that you have. Sure, some people have more access to resources, and some people are more naturally able to learn languages. They just learn more easily. I am not one of those people. I've had to work very hard to learn what I know. So I've seen the difference between some people acquire more easily. People have different strengths. I have those strengths in other areas. In language learning, I've had to work very hard. But because of that, I've learned many strategies for language learning to help struggling learners, to help anyone anywhere along the path, because most likely I've been there and I've been in that struggle. And so there's always an advantage to your disadvantage as well. Everything kind of balances out. When we look at those situations not as limitations but as just learning opportunities, again, we're removing those limitations that are self-imposed. When we reach that point, we spend all of our energy focused on, how can I learn this language? How can I meet my goals? What do I need to do in order to progress? And we waste less energy on those negative thoughts, like not being good enough, not being able to, not having the right resource, not having enough access to teachers, or whatever it might be. We find other ways, because there are infinite ways. That is looking at self-imposed limitations and what they do to you as a learner, and what happens when you remove those self-imposed limitations. And now let's wrap this up by reflecting on who are you to yourself when you make mistakes. So I want you to think about where you are right now in your language learning and in your learning and your relationship with yourself. And when you make a mistake, how do you feel? How do you respond? And this is going to tell you whether you are a person who is limited by themselves more, if you have more of those negative thoughts, or if you are a person who is that no matter what, I'm going to do this. And you're likely somewhere in between. Everyone has those moments when they feel down and when they feel like, oh, am I really going to do this? Maybe I should quit. Everyone has those. I have those sometimes. But it is what you do in that moment when you experience that thought. It is, how do you interpret that thought? Do you interpret that thought as, oh, maybe this is true, or oh, this is just a thought, it's going to pass through? My thoughts don't mean anything about me. My emotions and my feelings in the moment about what I'm doing when I get frustrated doesn't mean anything about me. What means something about me is what I do next. So I want you to think about who you are to yourself when you make mistakes now, and who you want to be to yourself when you make mistakes. That is going to improve how you learn language and how you approach your entire life, honestly. But think about that. If you feel like you want to share, feel free in the comments down below or ask questions, anything you'd like. And I'll see you guys back here next time. Bye!